Phillies Mailbag right now every Tuesday. We are joined by Frank Klose to talk Phillies on a Tuesday at 3 o'clock. As right before Frank jumped on, the Phillies made some moves. We'll get into them now, as well as the Mailbag with Frank here on 97.3 ESPN. Frank, how you doing today?
I'm great. You guys?
Doing pretty good. So we got to start with the moves. Obviously, a lot of people are screaming and yelling about what we saw last night. Well, the Phillies have made some corresponding moves. Nick Pivetta has been optioned, and in his place, it looks like you have Conor Brogan and Blake Parker coming to the Phillies bullpen.
Yeah, I think this was a move the Phillies had to make. It seems like so far this season, Nick Pivetta, who, by the way, just this time last week, if you remember, I was saying the Phillies really needed to commit to him to be a bullpen arm and to try to develop him. I got to wonder if there's something between his ears, because he is somebody, if he embraced the role, has a ton of talent and could have done it. You know, this might be something they have to do just to tell him to get his act together. I can't think of anything else, because certainly last night coming in with a 12-run lead, get 3 outs, was apparently too much to ask of Nick Pivetta. And so they took the bold step of sending him to Lehigh Valley, which means he gets to play those taxi squad games at Coca-Cola Park. And that's probably humiliating for him, but maybe that actually is something he needs right now, because there's a lot of people in this game that think he has a lot of talent, but he's got to get his act together. He's got to show that he can step up and be a major league pitcher. And so far, no matter what role they've given him, he's been unable to do that. And last night was probably the last straw.
Yeah, at some point, I think, look, you had too many opportunities and you're not doing what you need to do. Now, that brings me down the road of Vince Velasquez, because they're kind of tied together. They've been fighting for that 5th spot every single year. Do you think the last straw with Vince Velasquez is coming as well?
I think so. I mean, you know, Joe Girardi mentioned yesterday about piggybacking him and Spencer Howard. You know, maybe it's just the idea is that we're going to take Spencer Howard and give him some feeling of he'll be covered if he's – I don't think you need that. You know, you call the guy to the big league. You know, you don't want your starter to think that there's somebody breathing down his neck ready to come in. But for me, Velasquez has shown what he is. He's a guy that throws a lot of pitches. Most of the time he doesn't get knocked around a lot, but he walks a lot of guys and tries to be too fine with his pitches. I mean, Velasquez, I don't understand. I mean, this is what, year 5? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. At some point, you're going to have to really see if indeed he can be that bullpen arm. And Hunter, we were talking about this on our podcast, which I encourage everybody to listen to, by the way, that, you know, when the trade happened and the Phillies acquired Velasquez, some scout said this guy could be better than Ken Giles, the guy that the Phillies traded to get Velasquez, and better than Giles from the back end of the bullpen. And the Phillies have never gone that route. You know, he was demoted to the bullpen once, and next thing you know, there's a bullpen game, and Velasquez is the guy who pitches first. Like, they never, ever really embraced Vince Velasquez as a reliever, and I think the Phillies really need to give – all right, it's one thing if you say for one time you're going to piggyback him and Spencer Howard, but if Spencer Howard shows up the next start and gives you 6 innings, then forget it. Work on Vince Velasquez being a relief arm, and they can be a good one.
Frank, just following up on that, what is the reason why the Phillies seem so insistent on not putting Velasquez in the bullpen, whether it's been Girardi or Kapler before him or people before that? It seems like there's this, is it an obsession? Is it a commitment? Is it just naivete? What is the reason why Velasquez is never actually put into that bullpen role?
You know, I think this offseason, the Phillies really decided that they needed to add 2 starting pitchers. And I think that when they got out to the marketplace, they saw how much Zach Wheeler cost, which was more than they expected, and they paid it. They paid the price for Zach Wheeler. But then after that, they're like, okay, well, we're not going to pay the price of whatever else is left, and saw that the starting pitching market was a lot softer than they would have liked. So they said to Nick Pivetta, Vince Velasquez, and Ranger Suarez, go compete for this 5th starter job. And in my opinion, in Florida, in Clearwater, when camp ended suddenly on March 12th, Ranger Suarez was the leading candidate for that job. And so when you end up back in summer camp, I think Nick Pivetta had ruled himself out based on how he pitched. And at that point, what else do you have? So I don't think that this year was the insistence on Vince Velasquez. And in fact, it kind of I want to say bothered me. That might not be the right word, but Velasquez made the comment after his last start that he earned the fifth spot in the rotation. I don't think that he earned the spot in the fifth spot in the rotation. I think he was just what was left after Nick Pivetta counted himself out and Ranger Suarez caught COVID.
So one of the additions that they called up was Conor Brogan. He's someone who has intrigued me before in the past. I'm not claiming that he's going to be some shutdown stellar guy, but my question to you is, what can he be? What is his ability when it comes to this bullpen?
He's somebody that even Joe Girardi had mentioned before, and if you remember back to when the 60-man player pool came out, a lot of people they basically kind of lit up. And the reason why is that he's gotten through three levels of the minor leagues from A to AAA. He has just a 2.61 ERA, and he's struck out 106 batters in 76 innings. So there's clearly something about him that the opposing players just can't catch up to. So he's got that little electric arm, and I think, he's the type of guy that at this point, let's face it, you took a chance on Ramon Rosso, who is still with the club, by the way, who kind of needs to put it together at the major league level. But you saw with Trevor Kelly, I think you got to the point where you said, well, you know what, Conor Brogdon, let's give him a shot. He's not going to be worse than this. And even though they might be rushing him just a little bit, I think that there is a ceiling there that could be very, very helpful to this Phillies team this season and hopefully beyond.
Frank, the other move that was made today, there's a whole list of them. They called up Brogdon and Parker. They optioned Pivetta. But the very interesting one to me is they DFA'd Nick Williams. Now, if he is officially out of the organization, that means that's the last player, I believe, from the Cole Hamels trade that's going. So that means, Alfaro, Nick Williams, Jake Thompson, Jared Eichhoff. I know I'm forgetting a couple other guys, but they're all gone now, right?
Well, Matt Harrison was never really a real part of the trade. Yeah, he was just there to sort of eat the money. But you know what? The Phillies still were able to trade Jorge Alfaro towards JT Realmuto. I don't consider it a total loss. The Phillies signed JT Realmuto. I think it's a lot better. But I don't think you can mark it off as a total loss if that trade was able to get you JT Realmuto for this part of your this part of the history of your franchise.
Frank, I want to get your opinion on Spencer Howard's debut. I thought that, he clearly showed some great signs, that knuckle curve, the slider, and he does have a fastball that's intriguing, but the Braves attacked it early, and there weren't many swing and misses when it comes to that fastball. So overall, your thoughts on Spencer Howard?
I thought overall it was encouraging. I mean, if I had to compare him to Vince Velasquez, who pitched 4 innings, threw a ton of pitches and gave up 1 run, I would definitely take Spencer Howard over Vince Velasquez. I think the problem with Howard is right now that he did not get to pitch much. Now, if you remember back to spring training, when I was down there, he was sort of off on the backfield. He was doing drills. That one picture on 97.3 ESPN.com that you see over and over again of spring training that I took, that was of him doing some infield drill on the backfield. So he didn't pitch a lot in the spring because the Phillies were trying to hold him back, hoping that he would be able to help the Phillies later in the season. With the shutdown and all, he didn't come to the Phillies right away. They did pitch him in summer camp. I think he's still sort of building up his strength. So that's the one thing I would say about him. He's still kind of on his trajectory upward. I think we're going to see a lot better as we go. And even though the Phillies are talking about piggybacking Vince Velasquez on him, I really, really hope that Spencer Howard gets to pitch first, because I think he's somebody who, even if it's a shorter start next time, again, because he's still kind of adapting and trying to get used to the workload, I could see him, throwing a 7-inning gem, and then you forget all about Velasquez, and then hopefully he helps you in your bullpen another way. So I think big things are ahead for him. Everybody that you talk to just raves about his stuff and raves about his poise. And I thought when he came out in the first inning, he was a little jittery, but they got that under control right away. But you only make your major league debut once, and hopefully even that jittery first inning is out of the way.
Frank Klose joining us here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, you can follow Frank on Twitter. That's Frank Klose with a K, all one word. Frank, the Phillies mailbag is up, and I have to admit, my favorite question on this mailbag I want to ask you here, and it's not just Kevin who asked you this question. I feel like it's half of Phillies fandom is asking this question because before last night, it seemed like the Phillies couldn't score a single run at all. People want to know, where's Alec Bohm? When are they going to call up Alec Bohm? So I'll let you explain the Alec Bohm situation.
Yeah, so Alec Bohm is definitely on the Phillies' radar. You know, he's up at the Allentown alternate spring training site or wherever they call it. He is working out and having those intra-squad games with the rest of the player pool. I think there just hasn't been a sense of urgency to bring him up. And you might say, okay, well, they had a few games where they kind of hit a bottom. But you know what? When I look at where the Phillies are struggling, I definitely think that there's some room to improve there. Rhys Hoskins was a name that came up, and Hunter Brody, by the way, just pointed out on our podcast, his exit velocity off his bat has been pretty strong lately. He's coming around. We tend to think that Rhys Hoskins, he's kind of still in that mindset, which is maybe one from the last coaching staff, where it's better to take the pitches and walk a lot. But we really want to see more power from Rhys Hoskins and swinging at more balls that are strikes. I think he can come around, so I'm not looking to bring him up and replace Rhys Hoskins right now. And then you look at where else he could possibly go. Now, Scott Kingery, you could take Gene Segura and put him at second base and put Alec Bohm at third base. But if you do that, is this really Scott Kingery that we're supposed to see? Now, Scott Kingery, he was somebody who did have a battle with COVID, and Scott Kingery missed a lot of summer camp, and he did eventually arrive, and he's playing every day. But is he really totally recovered? I think that's a valid question to ask. And when I say recover too, he might be fine from the disease, but he might be behind in terms of his development and getting his timing right on his bat. So I would like to see Scott Kingery kind of play this out a little bit more. And then if you get beyond the starters, like if you look at who the bench is, so to speak, one of them is going to be Jay Bruce, and Jay Bruce is your DH, so you're not going to get rid of Jay Bruce. Phil Gosselin has been unbelievable so far, and there's absolutely no way to justify removing him from the roster. Neil Walker's been very good. He plays a bunch of positions. He's a switch hitter. They need somebody like him. And then Roman Quinn is the other half of the Adam Hastings platoon, so you can't really get rid of him either. So unless you start taking from the bullpen where you might actually need the extra arms right now, there's really no roster spot for Bohm right now that really kind of sticks out and says, well, here's the spot you put Bohm. So I think they're kind of content to just let him continue to develop up at that alternate spring training site. And, if there's an injury, I think absolutely that he's going to be the first person they call, whether it's the infield or the outfield, they'll find a way to bring him in. But for right now, I think they don't feel that sense of urgency, but it could come soon, especially as you get later in the season. If Scott Kingery is still struggling a month from now, well, then absolutely, you try to make that final push for the playoffs. But right now, there's really no overwhelming sense of urgency to add to the offense, which if you look at the average numbers, yeah, they've had some downs. They had some ups like the 13-run game. But it averages out to a pretty solid offense, and I think that they can wait and see just a little bit before they go making a roster decision.
Frank Klose, Phillies Insider for 97.3 ESPN.com. Check out the full mailbag right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. Also, make sure you check out the latest edition of the Powder Blue podcast. Frank, Hunter, Jeff Mosher, all talking about the Phillies and their bullpen and Rhys Hoskins and more on the Powder Blue podcast. As all guests, Frank Klose appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Frank, thank you.
Great to talk to you guys.